Namaskar. Welcome to Prakash on Basics. I'm Prakash Zog. Last time I told you about plasma, the liquid part of blood. That is the one that covers and carries everything that the cells in our body would need. Uh, Also, transport the waste products away, take the required parts towards the cells. Today, I'll tell you about RBC, probably the most important component of plasma, the one that moves along with plasma. RBC is red blood corpuscles, as it used to be called in olden days. Nowadays, red blood cells is more commonly used. I would just use the abbreviation RBC wherever required. Um, they are known as erythrocytes. Erythro meaning red, and cyte is basically associated with the cell, hollow casing as such. Uh, the information that I'm going to talk of today is quite interesting, but it's a bit of complicated when I come to some of the technical details that are there, probably at the end of the lecture. But then it's our own blood, so we must know it, know the details also to a large extent. The red color, obviously, as I told you long time back, is due to the hemoglobin that is present in RBC. Uh, and therefore, RBC itself and the blood itself is red in appearance, generally, for most of us. Uh, the function of blood is to transport mostly oxygen by the RBC or the hemoglobin that is present within. They absorb oxygen in the alveoli within the lungs. Uh, then it is transported to the heart. Actually, in case of fish, this is through gills that they have on the side, where uh, dissolved oxygen is taken in rather than direct oxygen, as in case of human beings. Then, with the help of the heart, it is transported to the cells or the various tissues throughout the body via the arteries and the capillaries, and then brought back via the veins. I've discussed this to some extent when I talked of the heart. The oxygen itself is used to release energy stored in glucose that produces waste products like carbonate ions and carbon dioxide. Then it also produces other waste products like lactic acid and urea, um, and carbonate ions, HCO3 minus. These ions, they're basically a part of carbon dioxide itself. Um, these then link up to the hemoglobin that is present and is carried back towards the lung. This process goes on continuously throughout our life. The carbon dioxide that is taken away or the carbonate ions that are taken away also have some amount of water vapor which is dumped off during during respiration, that is the breathing process, by the alveoli, and it comes out in the lungs cavity, and then it is thrown out by our compression of the lungs. Uh, right from school, you have been told, and we've done experiments to prove that it is carbon dioxide and water vapor that is given out. These are just the waste products after the release of energy which the body has already used. And all this is an extremely beautiful mechanism that has been set up within our body by nature and its evolution. To understand this beauty of evolution, we have to look at not only some of the vast numbers that are involved in the process, but also to the design that has been built up. This is obviously built up on scientific principles, and it's a wonderful concept that all of us as intelligent human beings must know, or at least have heard of. Actually, RBCs are protein filled two layered sacs. They are technically made out of phospholipids, and roughly around 97% of the molecules inside them are nothing but hemoglobin. These sacs that RBCs are basically to carry oxygen, transport oxygen. It's just like a highly well designed purse full of treasure, a design made more by nature as things evolved. Uh, Naturally, nature always designs things for maximum efficiency. And among the animal levels, mammals are the most evolved of the species. Man, of course, being at the top or the pinnacle of everything. So naturally, the RBCs that we have must carry maximum hemoglobin. So they must have maximum oxygen that is transported. So naturally, there is no place for any other stuff like the nucleus within the RBC or the red blood corpuscles or cells. Uh, Also, they don't have mitochondria. And I told you some time back that mitochondria are the ones that actually liberate or generate energy that are there are powerhouses. Uh, if mitochondria are there within the RBCs, they would tend to use up the oxygen that is there itself for their own benefit to release the amount of energy. That is not done. So there are no nuclei and there are no mitochondria within red blood corpuscles. Um, but they will also need energy. That is actually um, done by a process known as glycolysis, in which the necessary ATP, adenosine triphosphate, that we discussed long back, that is used anaerobically and the required energy is generated. How many cells are there? The human body has close to around 40 trillion cells. So between anywhere between 25 to 30 trillion cells, that is nearly 70% of the cells, or maybe even a little more of the cells within our body, are these RBCs. And of the total amount of blood that is there, 40 to 45% of the volume of the blood is nothing but RBC. Trillion is a very big number. 1,000 billion is 1 trillion, and the population of India is just around 1.5 billion. So you can imagine, and this is between every one of these 1 billion people, the number of cells that are present. Mm, Naturally, their number produced is also extremely large. Our body produces somewhere in the range of 2.4 million cells per second. That's close to 200 billion cells per day. That's around 133 times the population of our complete nation, or roughly around 40 times the population of the whole world. It's a big set of numbers. And now let's also look at the design part or the shape part of these RBCs. Each of these RBC contains roughly around 270 million hemoglobin molecules. And each has to give or take 4 oxygen molecules by the process of diffusion through the walls of the cell itself. Uh, so naturally, if the number is so large, the cell walls have to be extremely thin, delicate, and they must have as big as a surface area as possible. If it's spherical, only the surface ones will be able to interact very easily. The middle ones will not be able to pass on their oxygen. So the shape has to be modified suitably. Also, the RBCs have to pass through extremely thin capillary tubes. So naturally, their size also has to be extremely small. And these capillaries have to bend and turn and twist to reach every nook and corner of the body. So the shape should be such that it should be flexible. It should be they should be able to get deformed and straighten out and become stable once more. If they remain spherical, they will not be able to have that flexibility and deforming ability that we talked of. So the RBCs must be extremely small, and they must be extremely flexible because of their shape. And in case of vertebrates, they should not have the nuclei or the mitochondria also. So how big are they? When I say when they are small, how small? So they are roughly around 7 to 8 micrometers in diameter and about 2.5 micrometers in thickness. And they're not spherical, they are biconcave. Concave means bent inwards. So biconcave, at the ends naturally they are curled around, and in the central region they are flattened out. It's like two saucers that are kept back to back with the central area expanded a little more. Or you could say like more like a very thick crusted pizza that has a circular edge flat in the center. The central thickness is only about 1 micrometer, and the overall thickness is about 2.5 micrometer, and the complete diameter of this thickish type of a donut, something like this, with the flat region extending in the middle, is the shape that I'm talking of. And that's the shape of this particular RBC. So when you look at them from the side, they appear like a dumbbell. But if you look from this side, from a particular side, they appear like a donut. And this makes the surface area very large, so that even the central molecules can come very close to the surface and cause their oxygen to get diffused through. So that's the type of cells these RBCs are. Micrometer is the unit that I talked of. I talked of numbers long back, but let me just remind you. We know how much a millimeter is. If I take a scale, something like this, only about one single line on this here is a millimeter. If I divide it into 1000 parts, one part is 1 micrometer. That's how thick they are in the center. And around 7 of those 1000 parts of a millimeter is the size or the diameter of this RBC. So you can imagine how very, 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 very small they are. So biconcave, flat, thin in the center, donut shaped. In maths, the shape pattern is typically toroidal in shape, toroidal in its at its circumference. So that's how these cells are. If they're so small, so delicate, without a nucleus, without a mitochondrion, they must be extremely fragile and delicate. So they don't last very long. Their life is only 120 days maximum, 3 months. And in the process, they are constantly busy transporting oxygen. That 3 months lifespan is important because some of us suffer from a disease called diabetes, and one of the tests for this is HB1C test, and that is supposed to give us an average value for 3 months or 120 days. That's because our RBCs survive for only 120 days. How this works out is something that I will talk of when I come to what diabetes is and how it is tested and so forth. So let's now know a little more about that treasure that is inside this particular sac, and that is the hemoglobin. It's a combination of two words, heme and globin. Globin is something that I told you just a few months ago, and it's known technically as a metalloprotein. So it's a globin type of a protein, and it is metallic, and the metal in it is Fe. Fe is iron. So hemoglobin is associated with iron, and this hemoglobin is present in all vertebrates, that is all mammals which have a backbone. Mm. How much? In a healthy human being, the count of this hemoglobin is around 12 grams in a deciliter. That's 12 grams in 100 milliliters. That's for a good person. So when you test your blood, many times they refer to your hemoglobin is 12, and if it is more than that, they say, yeah, very good, 14. It can go right up to 18, 20 in some extreme cases, but 14 is average good. A little low, and they say your hemoglobin is low, and if it goes pretty low, uh, in case of males, as I said, it is closer to around 14. Women might be somewhere around 11 to 12. very small children have much higher hemoglobin percentage. And if the number drops below this value of 11, 10 or something, then you say that the person is anemic in nature. That means his supply of oxygen is weak, um, gets tired, sleepy, drowsy, because there is shortage of oxygen. There aren't enough hemoglobin molecules to carry out things. Now, then what is that hemoglobin? This is one of the most complex molecules that is there within our body. Uh, it is a it has a slightly varying structure among itself, and so it is categorized in two or three different forms. Actually, as alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2 as the four subparts that are there, and then you have hemoglobin for adults, and we have hemoglobin for the fetuses or the unborn children. These four parts, subparts, are like more like the cauliflower, where they are joined to each other, and something like this: one, two, three, four, and there could be a different combination of alpha, beta, and that combination would work out. That's different in some cases. And at the center of each of them is that iron. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 Fe ions, and they are capable of linking themselves to oxygen. Uh, each of these ions then can get attached temporarily to oxygen. When that happens in case of a hemoglobin, then this blood is said to be oxyhemoglobin, and that is bright red in color. So when I'm breathing like this, the alveoli have all the oxygen that is there. The RBCs come very close to this through the alveoli, and they exchange, drop out that CO2 and take up all that oxygen, and they get saturated with oxygen, and this is oxyhemoglobin. Then that is carried to the heart, and the heart pumps it around to different parts of the body. That's what is going on constantly throughout the body. Actually, this hemoglobin Fe can also attach to carbon dioxide. It can attach to carbon monoxide, and it can also attach to nitrous oxide. But our body basically is in the need of oxygen, and that's the important part where this oxygenated bright red blood flows through the arteries, reaching the different organs. There the oxygen is dumped off, and the excess amount of CO2 that is there is taken in, and this deoxygenated blood is darkish red, but it's within capillary. When it is tested and seen with a lot of light put on it, because of the arteries that are there, this darkish red with the background appears to be bluish. So in our school books everywhere, this deoxygenated blood is shown blue, while oxygenated blood is shown as red. Actually, if instead of oxygen there is carbon monoxide, this becomes even brighter red, scarlet red, very bright. But that's a dangerous issue. I'll come to that later. Uh, 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. How big? And what do they contain? This hemoglobin is said to be macromolecule. Macro word is not enough, it is huge. 1959, uh, a scientist called Peruz uh, tested hemoglobin by using a technique known as X-ray crystallography. It's a method of determining the structure of different materials. So it's more and more of a part of physics, but it is applied in so many different areas. So it was used to test the structure of hemoglobin. And all structural studies of this sort many a times are done using crystallography. Um, this was done in 1959. And 1962, he got a Nobel Prize in chemistry for determining the structure of hemoglobin. What does it contain? As I told you, things are based on efficiency. So all the elements that are very common on Earth are the ones that are going to be utilized. So there is carbon, there is nitrogen, there is hydrogen, there is oxygen, and there is sulfur, and there is iron. Not that simple. How many? I just give you a set of numbers. Okay. So it's a molecule that is made up of all these joined to each other. Carbon 2952, hydrogen 4664, nitrogen 812, oxygen 832, sulfur 8, and iron 4. That's the size of this micro, no, mega molecule. That's a big unit. But you can see that the whole thing is a factor of 4. So it's possible that I can break it down into 4 different parts. And there is a slight variation in the structural arrangement in the polypeptide chains that are there. And that's what makes it into the alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2. And the 4 of them, each 1, 2, 3, 4. They are linked up in lumps of chains, bundles of chains. That's what they are. And at the center, one Fe is there. So how much do they contain? Divide all this structure by 4. So you get carbon 738, hydrogen 1166, nitrogen 203, oxygen 208, sulfur 2, and iron 1. That's one unit. Second, third, fourth, one single unit of hemoglobin. So in those 4 places where there are Fe inside, you can attach oxygen. And I told you some time back that there are close to 270 million hemoglobin molecules within one RBC. Multiply that by 4 and the whole thing will come to roughly around 1 billion. So 1 billion oxygen molecules can get attached to this hemoglobin within one RBC, and there are close to 30 trillion RBC molecules, and that much amount of oxygen is being moved around throughout the body constantly, day in. I can't go to sleep. RBCs can't go to sleep. They have to keep working. Every breath you take till your last breath, these RBCs are carrying each one 1 billion oxygen units throughout the body for our energy that is to be released. Close to 30 trillion of them. That means 30,000 billion of them. Things are pretty complicated. So, how are these RBCs produced? The production takes place in the bone marrow of our all our large bones within our body. Four major ones we already know. We have hands and legs. So we have the femur, the tibia, the radius, the ulna. So all these four major ones, they're actually hollow tubes inside, and that's where the bone marrow is present. So they're like cavities inside, hollow tubes, and that is where in this bone marrow, all these RBCs are being produced. How? Because there are so many carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, all nitrogen, everything is needed. So in all the food that we eat and we get digested, remember the digestion process lecture that I talked of maybe 2 3 years back. What do we have? We digest amino acids, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, minerals, obviously, vitamins. Then what else is needed here in specifically in this requirement? Folic acid, uh, B12 vitamin, iron. All these are absorbed after in the process of digestion in our intestines, and they enter into our blood. Enzymes convert this iron from ferric to ferrous. Ferric is +3. It's converted to +2 because that is more suitable at that particular stage, and that's what is done. And it is then transported by blood all the way up to uh, the required place, which is the bone marrow. The other controlling hormones and enzymes required for the process of making RBC are produced uh, from the in the kidneys with the help of genes and chromosomes, and they are again transported all the way up to the bone marrow. Uh, there, with the help of our primary building cells, which some of you will know the word, they are known as stem cells. Uh, uh, with the help of stem cells and all these enzymes and proteins and the digested ingredients, a constant process of RBC manufacture starts off. The cells that are being manufactured originally have the nucleus and the mitochondria also. But as the number of hemoglobin uh, molecules starts rapidly increasing, these nucleus and mitochondria shrink, and then they are pushed out of the cell walls, and the bag is then filled only with treasure. Nothing else is required and nothing else is kept. The process of maturation to maximum level, it takes about 7 days. All this happens within the bone marrow. The B12 vitamin and the folic acid that has entered are the ones that help in this maturation process of the RBC. And once the cells are mature, they are let out into the blood. Actually, these stem cells also produce WBC, that is white blood corpuscles, and platelets in suitable proportion by the use of suitably controlled enzymes and hormones. That's a part more of details of medical theory. It's not a part of our now. Even the doctors won't usually tell you about all this. So that's what also can happen. We'll come to it when we talk of platelets and WBC. Uh, the controlling enzymes typically are referred to as erythroproteins. Um, and as I said, they come from the kidney all the way up to the bone marrow. Mm. This hemoglobin level, as I told you, is measured in terms of um, grams per deciliter. And that the more the number, naturally, the more is the oxygen that is going to be carried. If you are at a high altitude area where the amount of air density is low, then naturally your hemoglobin percentage rises and you have a higher content of hemoglobin, so that the suitable amount of oxygen can be finally carried to the desired area. um, 14 to 18 for males, roughly around 12 to 14, 15 is for females, children around 11 to 12, and infants would be more than 14, as I told you. Actually, this hemoglobin is also categorized into two subparts: hemoglobin that is there in adults like us, and hemoglobin that is there in the fetuses, that is unborn children. So fetal hemoglobin, um, that's has another special property. That's where all this evolution issue that I was talking of keeps coming. um, this has a greater affinity, that means greater tendency to attach to oxygen than the adult hemoglobin. So naturally, when the mother's blood has its own hemoglobin with its own oxygen attached through her breathing, which comes in contact with the fetus through the placenta, the hemoglobin with stronger ability to grab oxygen by the fetus takes in all the oxygen from there, because it doesn't have any lungs of its own, and uses the oxygen for its own building process. And this then results into the oxygen supply to the baby itself. And once the baby is born, the percentage of this fetal hemoglobin begins to drop, and normal hemoglobin then takes over, and that number starts increasing. um, there's one more aspect. uh, we tend to work a lot, and that is the instant where our muscles tend to use up a lot of oxygen. Well, it will take time for some of the other parts are not working that much. So near the muscles there is a special type of a hemoglobin molecule. It is known as myoglobin, and it's a storehouse. So what it does is, as the oxygen is being passed around, it stores a lot of oxygen in itself. And suddenly, when the muscle starts working a lot more, this oxygen is released, because there at that instant the muscles need a lot more oxygen. So all that oxygen is supplied for emergency usage at that point, and then it is utilized by the muscles. Later on, when the muscles relax and slow down, this myoglobin again starts storing up the necessary emergency supply oxygen for itself. Trillions of cells, extremely well designed, suitable for only one job, lifelong, functionally perfect. All this indicates uh, that there is an extreme complexity in all the process. Lot of intricacy in how things work, lot of intricacy in how things are controlled. Can just evolution do all this, is a question that I always have, because the earth has been existing for only about 4.5 billion years, and out of that multicellular organisms are there only for about 1 billion years. And out of that, only in 1/4 of the time do we have, and a much later part do we have vertebrates. And only in that, at the end, sometime you have humans. And in that small time, for so much of evolution to take place in such a perfect manner, that our machine keeps working for so many years. Look at and think of the complexity that is there. And realize that I have not gone into the complexity of genes and chromosomes as yet, which are far more. So think of how this beautiful body of ours utilizes and obtains energy from hemoglobin or the red blood corpuscles. If you have liked whatever I said, please like and subscribe to this channel. Read a little more, look at some diagrams and pictures that will be around. When you read through, I'm sure this would help you in understanding things a little better. tell your younger ones and others about all these details of how beautifully our red blood corpuscles function. There are two other components, WBC and platelets. So next time we'll come to those. Till then, namaskar.